Sure.
Okay. Video games is one of the world's largest industries and has a very rich history. For a long time, I didn't know any of the history of video games, so I decided I would look a little bit into it, considering I had always played video games. So a couple of the things that I'm going to go over is the emergence of the industry itself. One company I'm going to focus on mainly is Nintendo, because they did a lot to change the industry. And finally, I'm going to go over how it actually influenced the globe. So the influence started back in 1972 when North America launches the arcade cabinets throughout the country, and one of the first big main arcade cabinet games that came out was Space Invaders, and it basically showed the world that this was a viable industry, and Japan was ready to, they were in a period of reconstruction after World War II, and they started to release arcade cabinets, and it finally proved that they were moving out of a reconstruction phase and into more of a leisurely phase. So the arcade industry lasted for many years, but it wasn't secluded to outside the home for very long. Nintendo teamed up with an American company called Magnavox to create toy guns that would be used inside the home that you can hook up to a TV and shoot at your TV and play games that way. And then after that, shortly, they came out with the Game & Watch, which was the first handheld to be packaged with a microprocessor, which is a big step forward in video games. And then after that, in 1983, is really when they took a turn and released the Famicom in Japan. 1984, I believe, is when they released it in North America under the title of the Nintendo Entertainment System. That sold pretty well, and until Mario came out in 1985, that was the first real big global smash hit in video games. So yeah, this is the visual aid over here. You guys can take a look. There's some dates if you want. So yeah, after that, all of the Nintendo came out with Famicom, with Mario, all of this, they started publishing more. So some of the origins of Nintendo themselves, they date all the way back to 1886 when they were first started out as a Hanafuda trading card company. Over the years, they underwent many different changes and they changed their name, and they didn't end up being Nintendo until 1963 when they started to export entertainment industry items. They released Donkey Kong in the arcades, and that quickly became one of the fastest selling arcade cabinets of its time and is still around today. And like I said earlier, they released the NES, which was the first console to have third-party developers develop for it, which was a big deal back in the day because no one had that previous. Super Mario Bros., like I said, released in 1985, and that showed the industry again that in-home gaming was here to stay. And after the release of the NES, we've seen steady releases of consoles year after year ever since then. Some of the games that released for the NES were games like Zelda, Dragon Quest, and Final Fantasy, along with the Mario games, which was a big deal because all of these are still around today. Some of the other improvements that Nintendo made over the years was they released the first ACM game, which stands for Advanced Computer Modeling Graphics, which is when a wireframe model is constructed and then textures are overlaid around the model. And it's the first game that was released with it was Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo, and this was a big step up for graphics in the industry, which showed that Nintendo continued to innovate. They also released the world's first 3D game, which was Super Mario 64, when they released the N64. They also released the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color consecutively 4 or 5 years apart, which they solidified their place at the top of gaming because they now dominated the home market as well as the handheld market. And all of this was in part due to a man named Shigeru Miyamoto, who is often considered one of the grandfathers of gaming because he created such iconic characters as Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong. He created Excitebike, he created Star Fox. Basically any major Nintendo release he was responsible for. Originally he was hired in 1977 as a toy designer back when they were still making toys, but as I said, he's been involved in every single major step forward in gaming. So all of this led to a foundation that American companies could build upon. Companies like Sony and Microsoft ended up to release their own consoles in the States. a recent event that took place was when Nintendo released the Nintendo Wii, which featured motion controls as well as family-oriented gameplay. And Sony hopped on that bandwagon pretty quick when they released the PlayStation Move, which featured the same style controller as well as the family-oriented gameplay. And Microsoft quickly followed up with the Kinect, which was also movement-based controls and family-oriented gameplay again. So it shows that how Nintendo uses their characters, their innovative systems, and was often considered at the forefront of gaming in the world. And so yeah, to recap a little bit of what we learned about the emergence of the industry with the arcade cabinets back in the day. We learned about how Nintendo really innovated and pushed forward the video gaming industry, and finally the influence that it had over the world of gaming. And I hope everyone learned a little bit about the history of gaming, just like I did when I did my research and found it interesting. So.